Hi, I'm Ben, welcome back to my channel and to the book news slightly belated for July. Before we do get into the usual publishing industry news though, I wanted to take a moment to talk about and remember a friend that I made through this BookTube community who is sadly no longer with us. You've probably already seen this shared elsewhere, but a few weeks ago, Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf passed away, and it's utterly devastating. Alice was an incredibly kind and welcoming person, and someone who I connected with really early on in my experience with this community. I was only lucky enough to meet up with Alice once in person at a BookTube meetup, but she was kind and generous and really easy to be around. I really loved her content, particularly the stuff that she did around the Women's Prize and the plod along with Charlie and Jem. In fact, I loved it so much that I was a guest on it, and it was some of the most fun I have had since I started this channel. I just really can't imagine the Women's Prize season without her. Alice was 39 when she died, and it feels cruel that she is gone from our lives far too young and far too soon, and I cannot comprehend what her family and friends must be going through. She was just great. She had way too many books, but we always forgave her because she was such a wonderful person and she'll truly be missed. That was surprisingly hard to film, and I'm afraid I don't have a very elegant segue into the rest of the video's content today. So if this is a quite severe tonal shift, I apologise. But this month we're going to start with what's been announced, some new book announcements, because the biggest news of the month is probably that we are going back to the world of the Hunger Games. A new book in the world of Panem is on the way with the announcement of Suzanne Collins' Sunrise of the Reaping. This is the 5th Hunger Games novel, and it's another prequel. This time we're being taken back to the Quarter Quell when Haymitch was the victor. The book is coming on the 18th of March, but that's not all that was announced. There's a film adaptation already in the works, slated for November 2026, and it'll be interesting to see who they cast as Haymitch, or if they try and use that de-aging technology on Woody Harrelson. There's been a little bit of controversy about the new Robert Zemeckis film, which has used AI to de-age Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, so who knows what they'll do. The film is probably still just in a pre-production phase. A couple of other new book announcements to tell you about. There is a new Anne Tyler novel coming. It's called 3 Days in June, and it's coming out, you guessed it, in February. No idea what that's about yet. And then I'm reluctant to really give this any airtime at all, to be honest, but Boris Johnson's memoir has been announced. It's called Unleashed, a title that makes him sound a bit like a rabid dog, and it was revealed with this, frankly, hilarious image. There is something just about the way his hair is very brightly lit, but his face isn't at all, that is so funny to me. It's like someone used that magic eraser thing that Google phones have just on his face. Like, what is this picture? Moving on to the book news proper then, and first up, Europe is home to 24 official languages, and between 200 and 250 are spoken across the continent. But according to a really interesting article that I read recently, European countries are seeing an explosion in growth of people buying and reading books in English. Why is that? Well, apparently it's because people want the titles and the covers that they see on BookTok and Bookstagram. And I guess that kind of makes sense. I do see some bookish social media accounts in other languages, but English seems quite dominant in these spaces and gets a lot more engagement. That may just be what the algorithms are serving up to me, but it does track with this news. It seems it's already having an impact on how books are being published and marketed. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, for instance, has been published in the Netherlands in Dutch using the English language title and the exact same cover as the English language markets get. You might wonder, what does that mean for the publishing industry and for authors and translators? And as with everything, it's a little bit of a mixture. On the plus side, if these are new readers, they are just growing the pie of readers, then that's awesome. More people reading is fantastic. And also, just personally, I think learning and speaking a second language well enough to read a book in that language is so cool, and I am highly envious of those clever continental Europeans. But there are, of course, some concerns here. This could crowd out the market for translations into those languages, not only affecting the income of translators, but also authors, as the English language trade paperbacks are often cheaper than the translations. I worry too that it also might signal to authors in non-English speaking countries that you should be writing in English if you want to be read widely. Interestingly, this kind of goes against trends in the English speaking world, where translated fiction is being read more than ever, and especially among younger readers. And I do wonder how that dynamic might play out. Like, are French readers going to be seeking out English language versions of French books that have been translated because those are the ones they see online maybe? It's hard to say without any data, but it's kind of fascinating. And then just a much more general point is that language preservation is a really important thing, and it would be sad if we see a slow creep in the publishing world towards a homogenous internet flattened English. If you are watching this and you are from a non-English speaking country, I would love to know what you think about it and what your experience of English language and your own language novels are. Finally, some sad news that Ismail Kadare has passed away at the age of 88 after a writing career of more than 6 decades. Kadare was a titan of Albanian literature, and his most recent novel, A Dictator Calls, was longlisted for this year's International Booker Prize. Great in a way that he was at the height of his authorial powers right until the end of his life, but always sad when we lose a great author. Moving on to prize news, and we've had a lot of prizes announce their winners over the last month or so. Chief among them is the Women's Prize, announcing Vivi Ganeshananthan's Brotherless Night as the winner of the Fiction Prize, while Doppelganger by Naomi Klein took home the inaugural Non-Fiction Award. I haven't read Doppelganger, but the premise is really interesting to me, but I did recently read Brotherless Night, and it is an absolutely deserving winner. I loved it. It's a gorgeous novel, and I will be sharing my review on this channel soon. The Orwell Prize for Political Fiction was won by Hisham Matar and his novel My Friends, breaking through a frankly brilliant shortlist. I haven't read this one, but a lot of readers have absolutely loved it, and plenty are tipping it for the Booker. It could well happen, as there tends to be a fair amount of overlap between those two prizes. The Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction was won by Kevin Jared Hussain's Hungry Ghosts, a particularly exciting victory for him as it's one of the more lucrative prizes out there, worth £25,000. I have heard spectacular things about this novel, and I have had it sitting on my shelf waiting to be read since I went to his book launch last year, so maybe it's time that I finally got around to it. The Lambda Prizes for LGBTQ+ books announced their winners, and there were a lot of them, but the winners of the Adult Literary Contemporary Fiction Awards were Biography of X by Catherine Lacey for lesbian fiction, Family Meal by Brian Washington for gay fiction, Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang for bisexual fiction, and Wild Geese by Sula Emanuel for transgender fiction. Finally, the Encore Award for second novels, which I think is a great thing to recognise, as the difficult second novel is a real hill that many authors have to climb over, especially if their first novel was a success and there's a lot of pressure on them to replicate it. This year, the Encore Award was won by Isabella Hamad for Enter Ghost, which has now swept up quite a few of the smaller prizes. Only one shortlist to mention this month, which is the Miles Franklin Award, where Alexis Wright is continuing what The Guardian accurately describes as her dream run. Along with praiseworthy, the other titles shortlisted are Only Sound Remains by Hussein Asghari, Wall by Jen Craig, Anam by Andre Dow, The Bell of the World by Gregory Day, and Hospital by Sanya Rushdie. I don't think we're getting the winner of that one though until the start of August. I also only have one date for your diary this month, but it's the big one, or at least it is for me, because the Booker Prize has announced that its longlist for the English Language Prize will be revealed on the 30th of July. I've done some predictions for this one using infallible scientific techniques, so if you would like to see my almost certainly incorrect guesses, I will link to that video in the description. Do pop over there and let me know what books you're expecting to see on the Booker longlist this year. Moving on then to what's coming out, and to be honest, there's not too many blockbuster releases this month, but plenty that are interesting. I've picked out some that have caught my eye, and as usual, we'll go through them in order of the UK release date. We'll start on the 4th of July with a few books that have already been released. The first is Little Rot by Akweke Amize. This is set in Nigeria and is about sex parties, it seems. It has a positive rating on LitHub's bookmarks, and Amize is an author I mentioned recently as my reading shame author, where I've bought a lot of their books and not read any of them yet. I probably won't start with this one, but I am going to read Vivek Oji this month, I promise. Also out on the 4th is The Orange Room by Rosie Price. It's about an artist working in a hotel kitchen. Sounds like one of those inward-looking novels about art and passion and self-reflection, a little bit Kuskian. And then finally on the same day, Napalm in the Heart by Paul Gouache, translated from Catalan by Mara Faye Leatham, is a queer love story between two men who live on either side of a woodland after an unspecified apocalypse. It's supposed to be very poetic, and I've seen some rave reviews on Instagram. On the 9th of July, which is actually the day I'm filming this video, Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser Akner is coming out, and it's about a man who is kidnapped and brutalised in the 80s and the ripple effects of that trauma on his family. It is more rich people problems, and I am so here for it. It's had rave reviews on bookmarks. Another book with rave reviews news on bookmarks is Women and Children First by Alina Grabowski. This is a literary mystery about the death of a young woman where events are recounted from the perspectives of 10 different women, and it's published in the UK by my favourite publisher, the Indigo Press. Did I say that was out on the 11th? Because it is out on the 11th. And on the same day, we're seeing the release of Goodnight Tokyo by Atsuhiro Yoshida, translated from Japanese by Hayden Trowell. These are stories of a number of different characters threaded together by the fact that they're all passengers in our main character's taxi. I have made a start on this. I'm going to finish it very soon, but what I've read so far was quite delightful. Another book coming on the 11th is Above Us the Sea by Annie Akkad, the polyamory novel we did not know we needed, set across Wales and London about a Polish woman who falls into an ambiguous love triangle with a gay couple in Wales. But apparently it's also going to tear your heart out. On the 16th is the release of Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This is a fun Hollywood horror story from the author of some, quite frankly, strange books like Pounded by the Pound or something. And then on the 18th is the release of Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson. This is another queer love story about a man called Jake who dies after being involved in a third car crash. It's not a spoiler, it's actually, I think the first line of the book is, it took 3 car crashes to kill Jake. And I think the story is structured around those 3 car crashes. Heard awesome things about this too. On the 23rd is the release of The Book of Elsewhere by China Miéville and Keanu Reeves. One of the publishing industry's most notable purveyors of big brain weirdfic has joined forces with The Man That Won't Age. Apparently it marries the blockbuster with the cerebral. No idea if this is going to be trash or if it's going to be great. I always am a little bit skeptical when movie stars or politicians partner with actual authors, but I guess the proof will be in the pudding. And then finally on the 25th of July, The Pages of the Sea by Anne Hawke is coming out. This is a debut novel about family members of the Windrush generation left behind in the Caribbean. It's all about sisterhood and family secrets, and it sounds fab. As usual, there are some new paperbacks hitting shelves too. Some of my highlights are I Will Greet the Sun Again by Kashaya J. Kabushani. There are also releases of, I guess these two that I've got in hardback, but I think the covers in paperback look much the same. Julia by Sandra Newman and Carla by Colin Walsh. Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano has been getting some really gorgeous reviews on Bookstagram, and that one's out in paperback as well. Chain Gang All Stars is finally getting its paperback release. It's got a really cool neon green cover. I'm really liking that. And another book that's had a massive glow up is Henry Hoke's Open Throat. I think this cover is so cool. It is giving Hecate the portrait he deserves, and I would highly recommend this. I really enjoyed it last year. There may be some more releases, paperback or brand new releases that I haven't covered, so if there are any new titles you're excited about this month that I didn't mention, please do share them in the comments. Next up is Books on Screen, and we've already talked about the new Hunger Games film, but another new announcement that has me excited is that Taika Waititi has been attached to an adaptation of Percival Everett's James. Waititi has been a little hit and miss for me lately. That latest Thor film was quite frankly a disaster, but James really needs a director that can nail the balance between the serious themes and the comedy, and if he can keep it from being too slapstick, then I think this could be a match made in heaven. The cast for the adaptation of Patrick Radden Keefe's Say Nothing has been announced. I actually don't recognise many of these names, but among them is Maxine Peake, who is quite generally excellent in everything she appears in. The book seems to be having a little bit of a resurgence at the moment, as it was a pick for Dua Lipa's Service 95 book club. I was given a copy as a gift a few years ago now, and I do need to get to it because I find Radden Keefe's writing to be so gripping. I really loved Empire of Pain. Those are just things that have been announced, but there are a few recently released adaptations worth noting, starting with a trio of new Apple TV shows. Dark Matter is a TV series based on Blake Crouch's techno thriller. It's a kind of multiverse thing, and it's had pretty decent critical reviews, scoring 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. I liked the book okay. I liked it a lot less than his other novel, Recursion, which kind of broke my brain in a way that I loved. I could see myself watching this show though at some point. Presumed Innocent is a legal thriller and a Jake Gyllenhaal vehicle about someone in the Chicago prosecuting attorney's office being accused of a grisly murder. It's based on an 80s novel of the same name by Scott Turow, and it's fared slightly worse than Dark Matter with the critics, sitting at a still pretty respectable 76% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sunny is another new show on Apple TV based on the novel The Dark Manual by Colin O'Sullivan. It stars Rashida Jones as a grieving woman living in Kyoto with a domestic domestic robot made by her husband's company. It's got a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and is supposed to be darkly comic. This one sounds super interesting and a rare case where the TV show is probably better than the book, which does not have a very good rating on Goodreads, let me tell you. Finally, just worth mentioning that a second season of Interview with a Vampire has dropped. This is based on Anne Wright's series of novels and it's had really good reviews. It's sitting at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. Moving on to book bargains, and first up, it's not a deal as such, but bookshop.org is doing a really cool reading challenge called The Big Read, which, despite being called a challenge, is actually very easy. You just need to share a book you want to read or would recommend along with the bookshop.org link to the book on your social media channel of choice. And if you tag bookshop.org in one of these posts by the 31st of July, you'll be in with a chance of winning a £50 gift card to spend on their website. As usual, I have scoured the Amazon UK Kindle deals, which refreshed at the start of the month, and the July list is actually packed with absolute bangers. There are a couple of very well-loved books in the mix, such as Alice Wynn's In Memoriam and Daniel Mason's Northwoods. If the upcoming Booker long list has you in a bit of a Booker fever, then there are a few former winners available to pick up for 99p, including Anita Bruckner's Hotel de Lac, The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes, and The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst. There's some messy millennial woman fic in the mix, such as Green Dot by Madeline Gray, The Guest by Emma Cline, and The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. I haven't read the first one of those, but I did love the other two, so I'd highly recommend those. And if you are in the mood for something weird, there's plenty on offer, including The Centre by Aisha Manadir Siddiqui, Chlorine by Jade Song, and Shark Heart by Emily Haybeck. I will link, as usual, to the full list in the description if you want to pick up some of these bargains for your digital library. Okay, finishing up with the feel-good story for July. And this month, I hope you will forgive me for a little bit of self-indulgence, but a few things have happened for the channel lately that have genuinely made me feel good, and I just wanted to share those good vibes with you. So there's actually two things. First, you may have noticed that my channel recently ticked over to 5,000 subscribers, which is so exciting. And if I think back to my level of excitement about 18 months ago when I got to 100 subscribers, it's absolutely wild to think how much things have grown and how many of you watch and support this channel. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you all. However, shortly after that milestone, something even stranger happened. This. And I'm not talking about the fact that we finally got rid of the Tories after 14 years of misery, although that is quite a feel-good item of news. What happened was that this channel got featured in The Guardian. Well, actually not featured, it got mentioned in The Guardian. Like, this is an actual national newspaper, and it was on the digital edition, that's how I found it. But then I went to a shop on my way to London and I checked out the physical print edition, and it was also mentioned in there, which just absolutely blew my mind. So it wasn't in like the core paper, but it was in this insert magazine called Saturday, which is included on Saturdays, and it's got this lovely beach bum on the cover, so I get to keep that forever. But in that magazine, there's like a culture section where it tells you like what to do if you're going out or what to do if you're staying in. And in the section where it says what to do when you're staying in, Ben Reed's Good is mentioned as brain food, which is just nuts. I can't believe it. It was totally unexpected, a very weird feeling, but so cool. And in the context of BookTube, where many channels have tens or hundreds of thousands of subscribers, my channel is still relatively tiny, and to have it called out in a national newspaper just blows my mind. None of that would happen if it wasn't for people watching, enjoying and engaging with the content, so I still have you all to thank for that. It has been such an exciting weekend for me. So that's the news for another month. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a like, and if you'd like to see more from me, then hit the subscribe button. But until next time, toodles.